What's up, YouTubians? I want to start out today's show. I just want to show you some stuff. One of our viewers, Tech Hobby, gave us a comment and wanted to know what basic tools you need to do this. Now, this runs the gamut. I mean, there are so many different things. We have pretty much everything we need, but if you're just looking at doing something in your driveway, I got a table over here with I put a bunch of stuff on it so we can show you some of the basic tools you're going to need. Now, again, like I said, this is not everything. This is just for your basic little body repair. Let's go over and take a look. First thing that I want to stress to people is PPE, which if any of you work anywhere and they talk about personal protective equipment, it's really a good idea. Do I abide by it 100% of the time? No, but you know, safety glasses, number one. If you ever been into the hospital with a shard of metal in your eye, it's not cool. It hurts, it's bad. You don't know it's a shard of metal in your eye until you start trying to dig it out and make it even worse. So safety glasses. These are, we got them from the Matco guy. These are old man safety glasses. They're bifocal. So as you get older, you're probably going to need to get something like this, but they're really, really handy. Gloves. If some of you are the gentle type and don't want to hurt your hands, gloves is a good idea because Bondo sticks to hands, paint sticks to hands, glue sticks to hands, adhesive, weather strip cement, everything will stick to your hands. I don't wear them because I can't feel anything when they're on. That's another very important tool that you can't buy. You need to be able to feel what you're doing. If you can't feel that something's ready or something's smooth, probably ought to go be a carpenter. To be able to feel something and see it, those are two very important aspects of learning how to do this. They are crafts that can develop, but you're going to screw up some cars. But if you stay with it, now I'm self-taught. I never went to school for this. I just had crappy cars and I wanted them to be shiny. I wasn't as interested in the go fast aspect of it as I was the shiny aspect. So I learned how to make them go fast, learned how to make them shiny, and then a buddy of mine was a go fast guy, so he's the one that made the cars go fast. Every time, it's the phone. There, see, got me a smartwatch. Okay, gloves, safety glasses, Sharpie. Okay, these are simple things that you can get anywhere, but you're gonna need them. Whether you're marking on a car or marking out where you're gonna cut a patch or what have you, Sharpies are about the best thing you can do. And the best recommendation I can give you is buy the 10-pack, because if you leave that cap off for so much as 5 minutes, that thing will never write again. And if you try to touch it on your tongue and make it right, it tastes terrible. So I started out with hand tools. I did not use any air tools whatsoever, because I was doing everything in my yard. To cut down on your fillers, we used to use these. I call them cheese graters. They're called something else, I guess, but they would actually probably work quite well as a cheese grater. That's what we do. You let your filler flash to a certain point where it's still a little bit tacky, but it's drying, and then you can carve it into shape with one of these. A wire wheel is really something you're probably going to use a lot. Get rid of a lot of rust. It's just a handy tool, interchangeable. You can put grinding discs on them. These are flap wheels. I like these. They seem to work pretty good. They wear out quick, but they work really well. Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon, wherever you want to get them, you can get them. All of this stuff is readily available. Body hammers. There's a couple of different body hammers. You got pointed tips, you got a spade tip with a curve, you'll find a use for each of these differently. This is called a shrinking hammer, because if you put a dolly on the back of it and hit a piece of metal, these waffles in there are actually going to work to shrink that piece of metal. That's a whole nother episode about metal shaping, metal shrinking, things like that. I just want to go over some of the basic tools just to get started. All different shaped dollies, depending on what you're doing, how you want to hold it. This is about the only dolly I ever use anymore. I've learned how to use this in a million different ways, so it's pretty nice. And plus you can, someone breaking into your home, you can use that dolly, because that upside the head is really going to be effective. Spreaders come in all kinds of different sizes. I prefer this one no matter what I'm doing. I just like this size spreader. I buy them by the dozens, hundreds, whatever, and I throw them out when I'm done. A lot of guys will clean them, acetone, what have you. I just throw them out and start over, because one little speck on there, if you're trying to smooth the panel and that's on there, it's going to leave a little groove in what you do. So long run, you'll find out that just throwing these away is probably the easiest thing to do. A magnet. Magnet's a good thing to have if you're doing a butt weld, which is two pieces of metal laid side by side. These are just great to hold things. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. There's Clecos, which are a reusable 1/8 inch, comes with a tool, and we can get into that another time. Tech screws, if you need to hold a panel together, because when you're welding creates heat, and it's going to move the panel around a little bit. So every couple inches a tech screw. When you pull the tech screws out, go back, weld those holes up, if that's what you're doing. A welder, again, is probably an advanced piece for when you get past what we have here. DA, Directional Air Sander. It does not move in a perfectly circular orbit. It kind of moves from side to side. Different grades of paper. You want to start with a much coarser grit, 24, 36, move down to 80, 120, on and on. I mean, just keep dropping down until you get, we generally finish body work in like a 320 grit paper, and then we'll put primer on it and do our thing. Little angle grinders. These are super handy for getting in small spots. It's called a roll-lock disc. It just simply spins onto the arbor and locks in place, and then you'll break one of these off, and that little piece of plastic's nearly impossible to get out of there, but we get it. Vice grips. I've got about every configuration of vice grips there happens to be. Get what you need. There's needle nose ones. There's these little clamps like this. There's a larger size. There's these, which are handy for welding. If you clamp it on a piece of metal, it's going to hold it both down here and up here, and you can weld in the middle. Tin snips. They have these, believe it or not, for left-hand cuts, right-hand cuts, and straight cuts. Just for the sake of time, I'm just showing you the one, but a good set of tin snips is a good thing to have. We've got shears and throatless shears and things like that, which are all things that you can get into later on, but to get started fixing a quarter panel on Dad's car or something like that, it's relatively inexpensive to get started. It becomes much more expensive as you go along, but the money that you spend on tools saves you time on a job. If you can spend $300 on something, but it lets you do something in 20 minutes that used to take an hour and a half, count your time. You need to count your time. Tools are really a good investment. I've made the mistake before of getting in a bind or whatever, or I decide to go do some other job or whatever and sell my tools. Don't ever sell your tools. Once you buy tools, keep your tools. In addition to what I'm showing you here, there's a myriad of mechanic tools that you need. I have a toolbox with 3 of everything in it, and you're going to need 2 or 3 of everything. That's something that you can get into later on. Again, this is just basic stuff. Tape measure. You got to measure stuff. I've stressed to you a couple of dozen times in these videos, measure, measure, measure. That's probably one of your most important things. As soon as you make a mistake on a piece of sheet metal and you don't have any more money to go buy another piece of sheet metal, you're dead in the water. So make sure you measure everything. Cutoff wheel. You see how thin it is. It's very thin. This will cut through body panels, cut a square out if you got to weld a square in, rust repair. They have thicker ones. We use these for grinding out spot welds or doing some finish work on some of the welds that we do. You'll go through them like water. Buy good ones. This is one place you don't want to skimp is on your sandpapers, because cheap sandpaper that you get at Harbor Freight is not going to last as long as, say, a 3M sandpaper. So some things you do have to spend a little bit of money on, but it's still completely doable. Not a big deal to get into it. Cordless drill. You could do a million different things with a cordless drill. We use bits that have a lead in on them. These are great if you find them, because you don't have to drill so many little pilot holes. The filler that I like to use, Rage, don't call it Bondo, okay? Because it's not Kmart. You're not buying Bondo. Mad props to the Bondo people for inventing it, but it is the bottom of the food chain as far as fillers go. This filler right here, Not a lot of pinholes. It really works out great. You mix it with a little bit of blue. You can put it on a piece of cardboard. I've taken like wing windows out of cars to use for a reusable Bondo board, but I found that cutting a piece of cardboard is pretty good because you get rid of all your cardboard. This is a filler for when you're done. It's just a glaze, a finishing glaze. You don't use this for fill. You use this to fill minor scratches, pinholes, and that. But use brand name stuff. The squeeze tubes of finishing putty and stuff like it's garbage. Don't do it. You can also check our description box and I'll give you a list of all the tools that you need. A square, might not use it all the time, but it's helpful for drawing. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, so having something like this is kind of handy to have. You can get it anywhere. I had mentioned something about PPE before. Every single bit of everything we use is cancerous, all of it. So a good respirator, which unfortunately me starting way back when, I hardly ever used it. I started being a little more religious on a respirator when I was spraying an epoxy primer that technically began hardening in my lungs and really scared the daylights out of me. So I figured, hey, for $30, I'll buy a respirator and stay alive for a little while. If you don't wear one of these, bad idea. Paint could be absorbed through your skin. It can be absorbed through any mucous membrane that you have. It just can't stress enough about a respirator. You really need to use it. I generally, it depends on your workload, how long it lasts. They sell replacement filters. You can keep the mask, but they sell replacement filters. If you're going to buy a mask, buy a box of replacement filters. And then there's the directions, but we don't read them because we're real men. Very important. When you go to sand something, you can't just take a piece of sandpaper and fold it up and start sanding on a car, okay? Because what that's going to do is everywhere your finger raises or lowers, that's going to press that sandpaper harder. You're going to leave marks in that car, which you may not be able to see, but I guarantee you when you paint it, you'll see them. So that's when we go to things like this. We have a sanding block. This is going to span a much larger area, okay? So when so I'm not going to sand on his car because we're leaving the paint on this one, but when you go to sand on the car, that area that you're sanding is going to be straight and true to this board. So when you prime a car, take a black rattle can of lacquer paint and spray it over real lightly, and that's your guide coat. You sand until you feel you've sanded enough, and then look, if there's any black areas, that's still low. If there's any metal areas, that's high. So you'll learn over the course of time. It's not something that people can just go out and do. It's a learn. You got to spend some time learning this. But as far as sanding blocks go, I got all kinds of different ones. There's one for every use. There's round ones, oval ones, tall ones, short ones. You know, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. I love these little foam ones. They're great. The small hand pads, there are different grades of these that are different hardnesses. So depending on what you're doing, you know, if you're sanding raw Bondo, you need a harder one. If you're sanding wet sanding, color sanding, clear out, you need a softer one. Sandpapers. I could go into sandpaper forever without getting into color sanding and wet sanding and buffing and things like that. There's probably 10 different grits of sandpaper we use just to do body work. You want to start out with a heavier, which is a lower number, the 24s and 36s, and then they go up to 80, 120, 180, 220, 320, 400, 600, blah, 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 blah. We go, when we do wet sand on a car, we go to an 8,000 grit paper to sand it clear. 8,000 grit, okay? It's like basically rubbing a cotton ball over the car, but it works. There's no skipping steps in any of this. You cannot skip steps. If you skip steps, the quality of what you do, it is really going to show. I won't let anything leave this shop that isn't up to my standards, because when somebody goes to a car show, people are going to go, oh, who painted your car? Oh, Bennett's Hot Rod. Oh my God, that's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. If it's got a run in it, or if it's got orange peel in it, and somebody says, Bennett's Hot Rod painted this, they're not bringing me their car, okay? So we strive to do absolutely the best finish from start to finish on these cars. There's nothing worse than a bad reputation in this business because you need to move out of town. Nobody's going to have you work on their car. You're not going to be successful in trying to make a quick buck doing this because the time that goes into it and the amount of stuff that you need and the materials and so forth are really going to take that chance away. You got to do a good job. Reputation is probably just as important, if not more important, than the work you perform on people's cars. So don't offer it to somebody if you don't know how to do it, or tell them, hey, I don't know how to do it. I started out, I don't know, my dad had a 69 Cadillac, and I'm like, I can fix it. So I ran down and bought a bunch of rivets and the wrong gauge sheet metal and all the wrong stuff, and that car came out horrible. It'd do a killer burnout, but body-wise, it was horrible. So it really takes years to hone your skills. There are people who naturally can come to this, that can just, it's ingrained, they can do it. There are people who will never be able to do this. But if you really, really want to do it, don't get frustrated. Keep trying. Go to the junkyard, buy a junk fender, hit it with a hammer, and try and fix it. That's the best way to do it, and if you find out later on that, oh my gosh, there was an easier way to do this, then you go and buy the tool that makes it easier. We're getting off subject here a little bit, but if you're going to do any welding, it's always good to have a piece of aluminum. We've got several different pieces, sizes, thicknesses, and whatever. For a heat sink, you put this behind whatever metal you're making, and this will absorb the heat instead of letting it, say, travel out over a quarter panel or just ruin what you're trying to do. Because if you brazing, welding, anything with heat, sandblasting, anything that generates heat on the car is going to move that metal. It's going to warp it. Then you got to put more filler on it, and it becomes a nightmare. So try and save yourself a little bit of hassle and do the right stuff. Probably the most important thing for doing body work, because it does help you through it and gets things done faster, and you're a little more relaxed and things like that. It's beer. You gotta have some beer. It's a dusty business. Beer has really made all of us super professionals down here. And it seems like the more we drink beer, the better. I'm totally kidding. It's not true. Don't get all hammered and try and work on somebody's car, because that doesn't work either. Tech Hobby, you called in. Well, you didn't call in because we don't have the 800 number. You asked about basic tools. That's some of the basic tools that you need. I didn't even go over this. This is called a mud hog, okay? This is the same as that. It's a directional air sander, but it's bigger. And this covers a larger area. Keep it moving, don't sit on one spot. This covers a larger area, and when I discovered this, I used to use what's called an air file, which takes a piece of sandpaper about that long, about that wide, and you can span, like a sanding block, you can span, but it would cut waves in. There are guys that can operate an air file much better than I can. Once I discovered the mud hog, I never used the air file again. It just wasn't necessary. And again, to go back to the beginning, I began body work when I was a kid, doing everything by hand. I had no air tools whatsoever, and managed to come out with some really, really nice cars by hand. I think that has helped me to get to the position I'm in now doing body work, that I can use air tools, and I got my knowledge by hand without, because this, you can do a lot of damage with an air tool really quickly. So you got to know how to finesse it, how to work it correctly. I guess that would probably be about it for basic tools. May have left out a couple things, but you get the gist of it. You got some hammers, some dollies, some cutters, some grinders, some wire wheels. Tech screws are always your friend, and you can reuse them. Don't throw them away. Pull them out and reuse them. Different sandpapers, hearing protection, hand protection, eye protection. This is really all you need to start with. You don't have to buy the $14 million toolbox and, get all excited when the tool truck comes. Yeah, we'll give you $8,000 worth of credit. Okay, don't do that. You can start out with some cheaper stuff. You can get on Amazon. You can get pretty much anywhere, but you'll soon find out that good dollies are good dollies, bad dollies are bad dollies. I've actually broken one of these before, which you ain't breaking this one. It's not going to happen. The other thing about starting out with just some basic tools, if you get halfway through something and decide, yeah, no, this is not for me, I don't want to do this, it smells bad, it makes my hands dirty, it's whatever, and you really haven't blown your family fortune. This is only within reason a few $100s worth of tools, but that's because they got brand names on them, which you'll find as you step up, as you start making money, as you start building skills, if you spend a little bit more on a tool, it's going to last longer. It does the job it's supposed to do. I've had DAs before that just simply weren't true. When you're sanding a car, one edge is in a little further than the other one. So that's why I've invested money in some of the better tools. Do some of the harder stuff by hand so you learn what works and what doesn't. And then when you find out, oh, I can do it just a little bit easier with that tool, then go ahead and get that tool. But don't run right out and buy all this stuff. You don't need it to get started. This is all very much apprentice bodyman kind of stuff. If you were going to go to work at a body shop and they actually hired you to sweep floors and stuff like this, when you get your paycheck, buy yourself some hammers, buy some dollies. Like I mentioned before, go to the junkyard, buy a fender, bang it around, and then try it. You can do that as you grow, and if you're halfway decent at it, give me a call, because we want one more person. I know that probably really bored a lot of you, but I really kind of wanted to tell you what some of the basic tools are, because like I said, Tech Hobby brought up a great question. What are some of the basic tools if somebody wants to get into this? Let me walk you around and show you some of the stuff that's going on, and we're going to, of course, add more to this, so it's not just a boring educational thing. And I know I've said some funny stuff, but I'd like to say a lot more funny stuff. So let's show you some cars. John's 57, like I told you in I think the last video, it came in for firewall and floors. Well, again, the unexpected, it also needs inner rockers. So I bought some inner rockers. Those are going to go in this afternoon. We'll start fitting the floor into this car. Firewall's already done. This one doesn't go into body work and things like that because we're just not doing any on it. All we're doing is the heavy metal work on this. Laura, these are not mine. John the locksmith brought these in today, and no, they're not mine. I'm not eating them. That's the old floor from the 57 Chevy. We just cut it out. Just a quick update on the Corvair. You saw the video. Ben was here from Eclipse Window Tinting doing the windows. He's coming Tuesday to finish it up because I'm not in a tremendous hurry, so that's fine. However, I did get a call today from the gentleman that I sold this car to. His daughter got accepted to college. So what she doesn't get for scholarships, she'll probably get quite a few because she's a smart kid. He told me go ahead and sell the car for him so he can help his daughter with college, which I think is awesome. I mean, he wanted that car and priorities. I mean, that's something you run into. So if anybody wants a really cool 67 Corvair, hit me up. I've got one. Zach's 88 GMC. No two things will remain bolted together on this truck when we build it. Okay, so the frame we sandblasted this past weekend down to just bare steel in phenomenal condition, really good shape. So we used it's called POR 15 or POR 15, however you want to say it. Great stuff. You can do it. Their top coat is direct to metal, or you can put etch prime on it and then do it if you feel safer. I choose to use some etch prime, but we start out like this, and then when we put this truck together, it will be brand new, every bit of it. So there's that. We got something real exciting coming up next week. Some of you know that I have to go to Pennsylvania, and then I thought it was New Jersey, but it's actually New York. So it's been a minute since I did a road trip, so Video Dan's coming with me, and we've got One stop, I'm going to get some stuff for Cindy's cornet from a gentleman that's got some for sale, so I'm going to get it. But the second stop is going to be really interesting. So we're going to wait on that until we do the video, because maybe it isn't interesting. We'll find out. But we're going to pick up some really unique stuff and at a really unique place that I think you're going to kind of enjoy it. So, okay, touch base on some of your tools. As you advance in this, there's going to be other things you need, and that's where it starts getting expensive. You got a compressor, we got an air dryer, we have rotisseries, we have engine cranes, we have all kinds of stuff. If you look right here, we have cabinets upon cabinets full of everything that we found that we need. You never know. I mean, it's there, we've got it, but this is just one cabinet. This I wanted to show you here. If you're going to start pulling dents out of cars or even fabrication, it comes in real handy with fabricating. It's called a stud gun. Basically, you have these little copper alloy studs that slide into that tip. You pull the trigger, and it's basically like a spot welder. It'll weld that tip onto the metal. And then there's a huge assortment of different pullers you can use, which I'll show you at some point, that you can start massaging the dent out. They sell wiggle wire. If any of you are familiar with rusty cars, are around the windows in the pinch welds, there's little tabs that hold your clips in, that hold the windshield chrome. They sell a tip and those that you can put new ones in. So this was kind of a handy tool. Bought this a long time ago, and I was just so happy like a little girl. This was probably one of my favorite tools. From when we joust, we have the gloves, which are, very important. You need jousting gloves because, it's not all work down here. We actually don't joust. We did pick up, and I think we told you about this before. Come on in here. Went and picked ourselves up a pool table. Got to do a little bit of work to it because the guys went and picked it up and broke it. So nothing important, just some showy stuff. We got to fix that. And we also managed to buy a pool table with no cues. So we really can't play pool yet, but I did order some cues off of the Amazon, and that'll be coming. That's actually it. A lot of you have asked about the Super B. We're not going to go into great detail on a Super B right now, but it is an N96 air grabber, pistol grip, 4-speed, 8 3/4 inch rear, matching numbers car. This actually was mine, and I sold it, I don't know, a year ago, to Behind the Scenes Joe. So this is Joe's ride here, in addition to the one that he has back there that I haven't finished yet. But we're going to get into what we're doing with this car. We're still a little up in the air on a couple of things. I know that some Mopar purists are going to be upset with a couple of the things that we did, but we want this car drivable, not a bias ply, tired, crazy horsepower, uncontrollable thing wrapped around a telephone pole. So we put some bigger sticky tires on it. We put 17-inch wheels. It's got 4-wheel disc brakes, getting Dakota digital gauges. Come on up this way. Don't trip over anything. It's like I said, it's a matching numbers car. I believe it's got a chrome brake booster and master cylinder now, which is not stock, but I don't care. The car stops a lot better than the disc brakes. But I believe this car, from what I've checked, is all matching numbers. I know the carburetor's been replaced. Everything else is matching numbers. Like I said, it is actually an N96 car. Still got the fender tag, got the title, got everything for this car. Making a couple of drivability changes on it. Not that it wasn't a phenomenal car to begin with. We just want to make it more, get in it, go to Pigeon Forge, get in it and drive it somewhere, and not be tired and wore out when you get there. Really haven't decided what we're going to do as far as body goes. I'm a big fan of leaving it exactly the way it is because the car draws crowds everywhere it goes, versus one that's all shiny, and then you'd be afraid to drive it. This is a car that most people would want to restore and put away and show their friends and have bragging rights and stuff. We want to take this car out and beat the out of it without breaking it. So we're doing some upgrades on it, and it'll be fun. Air grabber hood works, car runs phenomenal. Really don't have to do anything mechanically to it other than the upgrades that we're doing. May even fuel inject this car, and I know that's going to upset some people because it ought to be left the way it is. It doesn't matter. I'll get another one someday. A vitamin C orange, burnt orange interior, pistol grip 4-speed car. When this car was sitting on the dealer lot, can you even imagine walking onto the dealer lot and seeing this car and going, oh my God, I wish I had $2,800 to buy that. Well, I'll tell you what, you ain't touching this car for $2,800 anymore. But when they were new, that's the crazy thing. I grew up in the wrong time because I'd have bought 20 of these. You could go to the car dealership and buy a drag car just like that, and terrorize the streets. And that's the plan for this one. We'll give you more on this car later, but just to answer, I think 3 or 4 of you commented, show us more about the Super Beat. It is what it is, and we'll get a little more in-depth on this car as we start doing something on it. Right now, this is just one of the, doesn't really qualify for stupid shop projects, but it's a shop project. So we'll get to it when we get to it. Keep in mind it's here. No, it's not for sale unless you got deep pockets. Want to go ahead and get a hold of me. That's it. Thank you again for everybody, all your comments, Tech Hobby for asking the questions. Anybody wants to ask a question, I will do my best to answer that question for you, as long as it's auto body related. Who cuts my hair, things like that. No, we will see you next time. Thanks.